Boom, 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 boom. Just thought I'd give it a few seconds, maybe a minute, before I said something. See if anybody actually bit uh, on my bait to get people in. Yeah, well, maybe they'll come. Uh, I told a lot of people that I was going to be doing some B bro or BR OSR, however you want to say it. So most people say bro. Anyway, that kind of stuff. Patron gaming, one for one time keeping, that sort of thing. And I will. I plan to do it. Um, Plan to do several a day should I be able to. Um, and what I mean by be able to is the cable going to work? So supposed to have storms. Anyway, and here in Wisconsin, the cable is above ground. So um, I just had some time to kill because insomnia. I got a 10 o'clock appointment. And I haven't been able to sleep, so why not just flip the OD? So I got a few hours to kill. Hopefully, somebody will come in and talk to me. So this doesn't turn out to be a waste of time. But I wanted to talk about the authors. I saw Griff, the heavily anti uh, BROSR guy, and you know, Secrets of Blackmore promoters, all that. Mentioned Tony Bath and some others, and I thought it was a good time to talk about that because no doubt, for all you archaeologists of the original TSR, D&D, and how it all came about and what these guys were thinking, you could really you got to look in wargaming a lot more than you look in role playing games, and that may be boring or because it's not your cup of tea if you're not into that sort of stuff. But that's where you'd learn it, and so I put out a post on Twitter. Hopefully, my old brain will remember everybody I put out there. But I mentioned some people that you should look at, that no doubt influenced these guys because they influenced everybody who's playing war games in the 70s. And Donald Featherstone, Charles Grant, Jack Scrooby, Joseph Morchauser, and Bruce Quarry. The particular attention to Quarry because he was a big Napoleonics guy, and he liked it a little bit more crunchy. So uh, he probably has more material on something like Kriegspiel than even some of the other ones. Um, so there's some others. There's there- a magazine, I should say, called Wargamers Digest. There's two versions. It started over in England and then it came to America. A guy in Madison, Wisconsin, printed it on and off throughout the 70s and even into the 90s before he got ill and passed on. And and there might be some really interesting stuff in there. A lot of it's going to be completely focused on wargaming and won't have any relevance to RPGs, but you will find some very illuminating stuff in there. Another guy you look at, I was telling people, there's a lot of famous folks. You may or may not know. A lot of people do know now that, or probably maybe always knew that the famous actor Peter Cushing was a big into this stuff. Um, H.G. Wells, who wrote famous sci-fi and stuff like that, like um, time machine stories. Whoop whoop! It I just turned on my phone on accident by touching it. Sorry. Anyway, but H.G. Wells, he wrote a couple of really informative books. Don't let their age fool you, because they're really old. They're like over 100 years old, but they're still helpful. And they were called uh, Little Wars, and there was a follow up called Floor Games. Good stuff. And Little Wars will help you understand, I think, Kriegspiel a little bit, even though it's not completely focused on that. Floor Games will, if you're an RPG guy, Floor Games is good to get. And you don't have to pay, some collector's fee. These things are, like a lot of these old books are reprinted. You can find one at a more nominal fee, um, reprinted by whoever, Amazon, or go to books or whatever. But all these guys, if you look these fellows up, this damn phone is pretty touchy. Um, but if you look these guys up, you'll see a lot of insight and stuff like that. So um, uh, it'll really give you some insight into what these guys were thinking, and probably give you some good ideas, even in role playing. Um, so I also linked a uh, historical miniatures gaming society uh, website, because it's got a pretty good little synopsis on the history of wargaming, and that um, will have some bearing for people that are kind of being archaeologists about it. This stuff goes back, as I've said on these other streams, and probably will repeat, uh, back into the early 1800s when it was created in Prussia. That's kind of the granddaddy of modern wargaming. Lots of people go, well, there was wargaming, there was Chinese, Go and chess, and true, very true. But uh, the roots of today's war game and the whole basis for uh, and guys like Griffiths will go, no, 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 that's not true or whatever. But I'm speaking in general terms. The catalyst would maybe a better term for these campaign games that led into Blackmore campaign and stuff like that. That all comes from the game Kriegspiel, which was not a game per se. It was actually a tool to train officers. I put some pictures out in a tweet a couple days ago or a day ago that shows that one of the sets of that game/tool. War games are used by militaries all across the globe, and tabletop war games, not simulators. Simulators too, but you'd be surprised how many times you'll see modern soldiers standing around what looks like some war game you saw at your friendly local game store. A lot, especially Marines and U.S. Army. So, and then a lot of people will say, well, I wonder how long, somebody mentioned something about when did this all start? Well, there was a guy named Fred Jane. If you ever seen, Jane's books, the military reference books, Jane's. Um, Fred Jane came up with his own war game, naval war game. There's pictures of him playing that with his friends on a parlor floor, circa 1912. I believe that history that I posted talks about the war game clubs of the late 19th century that were all over Great Britain. There's quite a few of them. There's even some remnants of that. I forget the cities, but anyway, there's a whole history on that. There's a really good book that gets into it, not like boring deep, but with a little bit of investigation. It's called it's hard to obtain, but it's called War Game Design: The History, Production, and Use of Conflict Simulation Games, and it was written in 1977 by another famous war gamer, a little bit younger than the ones I mentioned before, but his name was Richard Borg. And it's you might find the design uh, element of that book outdated. Perhaps it is, but it's got a fascinating, in-depth story of how wargaming came to be in the modern day, and not too much, not too little. It was. I really enjoyed reading that. I don't own the book. I read it at a library, but these guys all have now to go. I won't. No one's staying here long enough to. But I think maybe at one point I might feature some of these guys if the interest from the RPG people is there, and you can see specifically what each one of these authors all had a little bit of a niche that they added to wargaming, and how they influence things, and how some of that might have been cobbled together by players like Gary and Arneson and